Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. I'll be flying solo today. I think today's show, we're going to just dedicate to recap of what's been going on over the past year or two, what happened last session, and start to talk about what needs to be done coming up this next session. We're staring down the barrel at October, which means we are 3 months away from going back into session in Montpelier. There are a lot of people still upset about what's going on with the state of Vermont, the situation we're in, not just with taxes, but public safety. And I think those two items are going to be at the top of everybody's list this next coming session. So I want to do a little bit of a recap. First of all, S51, I want to talk about that because I saw a disturbing video that needs to be corrected. And I'm not going to refer to it too much because I don't want to give it any clicks because it's garbage. But just a reminder, S51 is the bill that passed, and it was signed by the governor. I was at the signing up in Montpelier not too long after we recessed this summer. And by the way, it was way too late. We need to be doing that. Also looking at shortening up the session this next session. Get a lot of stuff done and go home early, save the taxpayers money that way. But getting back to S51, two major things came out of S51. Number one, it was military retirements tax relief. So that it provided not complete exemptions for people who were in the military and retired from the military after 20 years of service, but it was very close. It was better than what we had in years prior, and I believe it was somewhere between 13 and 19 years that this was being attempted, and finally last session we were able to get it done. It also included, S51 included Social Security tax relief. But I want to make it very clear on what happened with S51. S51 almost died, and it got held on the wall. It looked like it was making progress, but then it got hung up in committee. And if not for the efforts of an independent named Jed Lipsky from Stowe, then S51 never would have made it across the finish line. So I want to make that very clear. Okay, it did have tripartisan support, but because of a chair in a committee by the majority, it almost wound up dying in another session, or hanging up on the wall with the potential of dying. So I want to make that very clear. It had tripartisan support. And if not for an amendment by, like I said, Representative Jed Lipsky from Stowe, then it still would have been hung on the wall and it wouldn't have been passed and signed into law. This bill actually didn't need very much debate because it had enough sponsors on the bill to be presented in committee, voted out of committee, and then sent to the House, to the floor of the House, to be voted on that quickly. It could have, because it had that number of people in the House, like I said, tripartisan support. So I wanted to make sure I covered that, because S51, had it not been for the massive gains that we made and changing of seats in the legislature last election, S51 never would have made it across the finish line. That needs to be very, very clear. Without the number of Republicans that got elected this past session, then S51 would have never got across the finish line. So that needs to be made blatantly clear. Now, I want to get on to some of the mistakes that the past legislatures have made that a lot of people, unfortunately, in elected positions are afraid to admit are mistakes, okay? But they are. Let's be serious about this. There are mistakes that have been made. Look, we have to come to the conclusion that, yes, we're just flesh and blood. Those of us in the legislature, we're just human. We're only human. Nobody is perfect. Anybody who tells you they're perfect, walk away, because they're not. But a lot of mistakes were made. And we have the opportunity this coming session to correct some of the mistakes. And the main reason we want to correct these mistakes is because the taxpayers have had enough. How many times are you going to tap somebody's wallet before it's empty? And that's what we need to deal with. And that's what we need to talk about. Taxpayers are fed up. They're fed up for a lot of reasons. But let's get to mistake number one. The Global Warming Solutions Act. It was a massive mistake. It was pushed by people like those who are in the United Nations. And the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen, has zero sovereignty over the United States. Zero. So just keep that in mind. This was a push by people, a lot of empty suits in the United Nations. Okay? The Global Warming Solutions Act has mandates that put the state of Vermont at risk to be sued again, because we've been sued once and it will probably happen again. It puts incredible mandates that should be at least goals, and they're goals that we probably, if we do have economic freedom and economic growth in this state, we will have increased population in this state, which means the goals that are listed in the Global Warming Solutions Act are not attainable unless you want to reduce the population, unless the only economy you have in the state of Vermont, or you want to have, is two types: a service economy and a tourist economy. If you do not want a production economy, then you want the Global Warming Solution Act, GWSA. But we want a production economy here. This is a state that has a rich heritage of production, of innovation. We have a wood products industry that is on life support, and we need to remove and replace some of the regulations. We need to eliminate many of the regulations if we want our wood products industry to thrive. We have so many regulations that right now most of our wood products are shipped out of this country, across the border, northern border to Canada, and then come back to us as finished products. That's really unbelievable. We have a situation in this state where we know how to take the raw products from our forests, from our working lands, and turn them into products that can be used to build the homes that we need in this state. And we're somewhere in the ballpark of 36 to 41,000 homes in the hole. So right there, we could do a lot for our economy and affordability, because we could keep stuff in our small state so that we don't need to worry about shipping costs, because it won't go very far. Our products will not go very far. We won't have to worry about tariffs, because everybody is, I shouldn't say everybody, but there are a lot of us who have been enticed to light our hair on fire and run around screaming because tariffs are going to, they're going to cause the sky to fall. So if we keep our wood products industry alive and we allow our wood products industry to thrive and remove regulations, then we can have things like plywood and dimensional lumber and pellets and oriented strand board and plywood and everything else that we can make from wood products made right here in this state. Wouldn't that be nice? And how many people would be able to have jobs that were close to them? So that's one of the other problems that we have. No mistake. Another mistake is we have the Clean Heat Standard, Act 18. Act 18 is only in cold storage. It's not dead. It's not gone away. It was a hot item for this past January, and then the Democrat supermajority went away. There's only a majority, and because of the chairmanships in certain committees, the Clean Heat Standard did not get pulled off the wall. It did not get voted on. It did not get repealed. So that needs to happen this next session. It needs to be a priority. The Clean Heat Standard is still holding. It's still being held over our heads, and it needs to go away. The threat of a possibility of a carbon tax or any kind of additional tax on gasoline, diesel, home heating oil, propane, natural gas, all of those petroleum products that are key to our economy, that keep our economy so that people, no matter your socioeconomic standing, whether you are at the higher end of the scale, pay scale, or the low end of the scale. Inexpensive energy is what is going to jumpstart the economy in the state of Vermont. Okay, and I need to get a little bit off topic here. The executive order that the governor signed, I believe it was, a little more than a week ago, is a home run as far as I'm concerned. Rolling back a lot of the regulations to 2020 levels, streamlining and accelerating the permitting process and the review process. It's a great idea, and I hope it survives any lawsuits or any pushback that we know is going to come, because there's going to be plenty of it coming. But it's a step in the right direction if we want to see homes built, if we want to see our retirees want to stay here, afford to stay here, and our young people want to move here, get jobs here, and raise families here. Let's see. Shaftesbury Solar Project. We talked about this just last show. Now, there's a huge solar project that was a massive failure in California. It was supposed to go all the way to something like 2039, and it's coming to an end prematurely. It happened during the Obama years, and it turned out to be nothing more than a massive $1.6 billion boondoggle. A lot of the problems are that it didn't produce what it was projected to produce. It had product failures and all kinds of things that should have been foreseen in the process of putting this project together. It was an environmental nightmare because the project actually was so harmful to birds. It killed north of 6,000 birds a year, and it basically vaporized them because of the garage door style mirrors that were supposed to heat 3 water towers to create hot water for electricity production. So it was a nightmare, and it's going to be shut down decades early. And the Shaftesbury Solar Project, getting back to that, we're going to bear the burden, but we probably will not reap any of the rewards, because the rewards are going to be reaped by out-of-state investors. So how does that? It's going to be this massive solar project taking away forest and working agricultural land is going to be probably a environmental nightmare as well as an economic nightmare, because the state of Vermont won't reap any of the benefits, none of the benefits. So that's a big problem. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, and there's quite a few, but the free benefits that go to people who come to Vermont seeking free benefits. The homeless hotel program is one that comes to mind. Now I think we're approaching somewhere in the neighborhood of $800 million for this program, almost $1 billion. And in my view, it's a failure, because it promotes a situation where people get into a hotel. They're basically they're isolated. And there's no incentive to do something in return for any of the free benefits. There's no way to have people get into programs to get them out of a situation where they need government assistance. Your assistance and my assistance, ladies and gentlemen. They need the assistance from taxpayers and other residents of Vermont. That's what this is. It's not free. It's on someone else's back. And this program is not working. It's costing us tens of millions of dollars. Now, like I said, north of $800 million. And taxpayers in Vermont are fed up. So these are just some of the things that I wanted to talk about with respect to these, like Rob Roper said, these progressive people, you and I, ladies and gentlemen, experiencing progressive policies. And people have gotten to the end of their rope with this. We've got to pay some bills. We'll be right back. You're listening to Right Side Up.
Hey, this is Steve from Granite Rock. I'd like to thank Mike Tagliavia and Right Side Up for being part of Granite Grok and Grok Media LLC's podcast network. You can check out all our programs every night of the week at 8 p.m., except on Tuesdays when we do Granite State Live, which starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Please make sure to check out all our programming, including Grok Talk, Granite State Live, Justice for All, Right Side Up, Manch Talk, The New England Take, and our newest edition, The Elsa Kurt Show. You can also check out content from Shadowband, The Blue Collar Intellectual, The Generation Report, and The Vermont Podcast. And be sure to visit granitegrok.com for news and opinion you can't get anywhere else.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Tagliavia. I want to get back into our discussion real quick. We're talking about mistakes that have been made in the legislature that many in the legislature just need to come to grips with the fact that they have made mistakes, admit that they're human, that they're just flesh and blood, and reverse course. And we talked about a few of them, the GWSA, the Clean Heat Standard, Shaftesbury Solar. We're seeing this is going to be a mistake. It's going to be dollars that leave the state, that don't come back to the state, while we watch our beautiful pastoral views, our Green Mountain views, disappear in the name of green energy. We were talking about another mistake that was the homeless hotel program. And somewhere in the Balta Park now of $800 million. And one of the main problems is with this is, and it's also a problem in our voting system in this state, is just the intent to become a resident. That's basically all you need to get benefits and the right to vote in this state. I have the intent to be a resident. And you are automatically have so many things available to you, not just the right to vote, but the right to free stuff, the fruit of other people's labor. That's what it is. It's not free stuff. It's something that someone else has paid for. So that's another mistake that needs to be made, needs to be fixed. Excuse me. When we have a system where when you live in the state of Vermont, if you've moved here, if you're here, if you have your vehicle here for at least 30 days or more, then it must be registered here. If you would like to get a hunting license in the state of Vermont, you need to be a resident and show proof that you've been here for at least 6 months. So we have these double and triple standards depending on what kind of a right or a benefit you'll be getting in this state. And that needs to be fixed. I know there's some stuff going on with the SNAP program that it looks like, I was just reading an article, that looks like some of the audits in the SNAP program are not going to restrict the ability of certain people to get on SNAP until February of 2026. I hope the state of Vermont elects to have some of the restrictions with respect to the foods that people on the SNAP program can get will be one of those additional restrictions. And why would I say that? How better, in my view, to tell someone you care for them, that you're worried about their health, than to tell them certain starchy, sugary foods or drinks are not available through the SNAP program. And why would we do that? Because we don't want you to also have a health problem that will wind up costing us as taxpayers who are providing the benefit more in healthcare costs, because sugary, starchy drinks wind up, in the end, causing some sort of health issues that will eventually cost the state of Vermont more money. So we're talking about a lot of mistakes here that are probably easier fixed in concept than they are when it comes to legislation, but that can be worked out. But these are debates and discussions that need to be held and made in committee, that need to be done in committee. One of the other mistakes that we need to fix is we need to pass H65, which is basically a bill in the House right now, pinned on the wall in energy, I guess, that would not require, that would take away the requirement for Vermont to sign on to the California Clean Air Act waiver. So that's basically the clean car and truck rule that the governor signed an executive order postponing it, delaying it for 1 year. So we're going to be in another session where this H65 really should come to light, get debated, get voted out of committee, and get voted on the House floor. And it needs to be passed so that we stop having to worry about car manufacturers not bringing some of their most popular models to this state because of the California Clean Air Act waiver. We need to have options. I think I've brought this up, and I'm going to continue to bring it up. I've brought it up in conversations. I've spoken about it on the radio, and it needs to be the topic of conversation at the coffee shop, on the job site. It needs to be a topic of conversation all over the place. We need to stop wasting our money on this kind of stuff. If you walk into a grocery store, look at not only your bread aisle, look at your dairy aisle. How many options do you have for types of bread? 5-grain bread, 7-grain bread, 9-grain, 11-grain, rye, pumpernickel, white, bleached white flour, wheat, sourdough, all different. We've got hot dog buns, we've got hamburger buns, potato rolls, all kinds of options in your bread aisle. Then go to the dairy aisle. You've got whole milk, you've got skim milk, you've got 1%, you've got 2%, you've got half and half. You've got cream. How many different types of eggs could you buy? Different sizes, free range, all different, organic. And yet in this state, your legislature, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, your elected legislature told you that you will only have eventually one option for energy, electricity. In this state, that's not feasible. It's not economically viable. And it's going to be a disaster. It's going to lead us to blackouts if we don't reverse course. So this is one of the reasons why I keep talking about the mistakes that have been made. Mistakes that are easily corrected. Yes, there'll be a lot of hotly debated issues, but in the end, they are easily corrected by simple repeal. That's what it takes. Simple repeal. We have had an enlightenment of common sense countrywide, worldwide. And my greatest fear, ladies and gentlemen, is that the state of Vermont is late to the game with respect to this enlightenment of common sense. So this is one of the reasons why I'm asking everybody within earshot to please talk about these issues. Talk about them with your friends and family members. There will be some that will not want to hear it, and I get it. You don't have to go and put yourself through that kind of an argument. But there will be people who will be open to the discussion. And that discussion, I believe, has to be made. Remember, I think I talked about this on the show. Maybe I didn't. But I met someone at the Tunbridge Fair who is a former liberal who came to the realization after being told by friends that certain people needed to be demonized because they were crazies, they were radicals, whatever. And that through finding long-form interviews of people that this particular person thought made sense, and hearing in their own words that this person actually did make sense to them, that this person came to the conclusion that a lot of what friends and the outlets that this person was listening to and viewing was not truthful. So this is why I say, if you don't have these discussions and bring out some of these facts, bring out some of the data, talk about common sense. Common sense. We need to find balance. We're closer to balance this past session and this coming session than we were in the last biennium. But we're really not there yet. And this is why I keep stressing having this discussion. Bring this stuff up. Sometimes it's going to be hard to talk about. There are going to be people who are not willing to be open. I get that. But if you inform yourself and you bring facts and data and reality and common sense, then sooner or later it's going to break through. And you have to also remember that not everybody, if you're having a discussion and it's a group of people, not everybody's going to be open to it, but at least one or two will be. And sooner or later that light bulb is going to go on. And that person whose the light bulb goes on is then going to talk to other people. And I've seen it so many places and so many times. A lot of the people who are best to get the word out are the former liberals or the former progressive Democrats who came to realize that what they were told, the narrative they were force-fed, is nothing more than a narrative. It's not based in fact. It's not based in reality. When you throw the data at it, you realize that it just doesn't hold water. So, and when you look at, I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but I do not watch mainstream media because it's nauseating. So, but when you look at what's going on nationally and worldwide with the insane name calling instead of having a discussion, the attempts to silence people, not have a debate with them, not have a discussion civilly, it's getting to a really a fever pitch. So find ways. I still think there's ways that you can find ways to talk to people who are still open to ideas. And that's the way we are going to, in this state, this tiny little Green Mountain gem of a state, how we're going to actually bring back prosperity to the state, have financial and economic enlightenment, where we're going to have a boom, where we can actually, honestly, truly have a dawn where we have economic prosperity and a housing market that is prosperous, an affordable housing market that is prosperous. But if we don't talk and inform ourselves and talk to those people who are a little bit less informed and try to give them ways to find out the truth, then unfortunately I'm going to continue to hear week after week, like I did this past week, someone else who, if things don't turn around because of the taxes on their land, it's been in their family for 3 or 4 generations, that it'll have to be sold because they can't afford to pay the taxes. I want to go out and have conversations week after week and stop hearing that at least once a week. I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but I really, really, truly want to stop hearing that. I want to hear the opposite. What I'd like to hear is, well, I had a relative who retired, a brother or a sister or an aunt or an uncle, and because of the legislation we repealed or enacted, that the economy is better in Vermont, it's more affordable, and guess what? Those Vermonters are coming back. And those young Vermonters are deciding, instead of trying to find another job and a place to live outside of the borders of this beautiful state, that they're going to stick around. They're going to stick it out. They're going to keep themselves informed. They're going to do like I keep imploring people to do. Find out who your legislators are. Find out what they vote for, what they stand for. Go to your select board meetings. Go to your planning commission meetings. Know what's going on in your town. I know it takes time. It takes a lot of time. But in the long run, it's going to save you time, and it's going to save you money, because you're going to know what's going on. And if there's something that's coming up that could possibly cost you money in the form of taxes, or it could cost you in the form of rights lost that you would find out accidentally or incidentally later on, that you'll be informed of ahead of time, and that maybe you can let your friends and neighbors know, so that you could vote against some of these policies that are going to cost you money or freedoms. So we've come to another end of another segment. We've got to pay a few more bills. We'll be right back. You're listening to Right Side Up.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteRock.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. Before we get back into our discussion about mistakes that have been made that need to be fixed, I wanted to just remind our listeners, rightside-up-radio@gmail.com, if you'd like to drop us a line. For some reason you can't find us, or you're out of the listening reach of WNTK Radio, go to WNTK.com. Find the podcast button, click on it, scroll down to Right Side Up, and you can listen to any number of our shows. You can share it. You can go to Podbean and you can find our shows. You can find us also on granitegrok.com. You can find us on 802 Scoop Facebook, and you can find us on 802 Scoop YouTube. So lots of ways to listen. Lots of ways to spread the word, ladies and gentlemen, so I hope you are able and willing to do so. I want to get back into our discussion of mistakes that can and should be fixed this next session. The Climate Superfund, House Bill 518. It is a bill to repeal the Climate Superfund Cost Recovery Program. This is basically a bill to try to, quote unquote, make big oil pay. It needs to stop. It's a waste of time. It is a waste of resources of the state. When you look at someone who is my age and what inexpensive petroleum products have done for the standard of living for so many people in this country and worldwide, that the list of pros versus cons far outweighs the pros, far outweigh the cons, and that this Climate Superfund is a waste of time. It's a waste of time. This money and these resources in the state of Vermont could be put toward many, many better things, including trying to figure ways to improve our housing stock, give us more housing stock in the state, review and repeal regulations that will keep money in the average Vermonter's pocket. And that's where it needs to stay. It's your money, ladies and gentlemen. It needs to stay there in your pocket. It needs to be there for you to decide what you need to spend it on, not what we in Montpelier tell you you need to spend it on. So I wanted to get off on a little bit of a tangent, but not quite so much of a tangent, on a post on Substack, Thomas J. Shepstone, Energy Security and Freedom. This is dated September 29, 2025. And this is another pro in the column for pros with respect to petroleum products and why we should be still using them as our go-to option for energy. And the title is, What Can't Natural Gas Do for Others? Alberta natural gas byproducts are now being exported to Japan. Let's see. A deal to supply Asian customers with butane shipped from the coast of BC promises to expand Canada's global energy footprint, underscoring untapped potential and the benefits of diversifying beyond the U.S. market. Now, I'm going to break from the article for a minute. How long will it be before the United States jumps into this with both feet again, so that the cost of our petroleum products and energy products start to come down and are more available? And by our, I mean U.S. They should be coming more available, and hopefully very soon they will, with the moves from the EPA, the federal EPA, and Department of Energy. But let me get back to this article. Butane and propane are what's known as liquid petroleum gases, LPGs. Produced during natural gas processing and oil refining, these versatile energy products are in high demand for a wide range of uses, including feedstock for plastics and synthetic rubber production, fuels for heating and cooking, and solvents in industrial applications. Quote, demand remains strong going forward for the Asian markets as consumers continue to increase living standards and income levels and use more of the everyday items that we take for granted, end quote, said Martin King, Managing Director of North American Energy Market Analysis for Houston-based RBN Energy. The new deal commits Calgary-based AltaGas to supply German chemical giant BASF with butane for chemical manufacturing and industrial use in Asian markets. And I want to break from this article for a minute. This is talking about taking a byproduct of the petroleum industry and actually using it and selling it all over the world for use. So this is not a waste. This is actually being put into use in, let me see, what was it to, let's see, for customers to continue to increase living standards and income levels. Would we like to see that in Vermont? I guess we would. Butane and propane from Alberta can be shipped by rail to reach terminals on the West Coast, including the AltaGas Ridley Island Energy Export Facility that is under construction near Prince Rupert. Known as REEF, it is an expansion of the company's LPG export operations that is scheduled to start operating in 2027. AltaGas opened Canada's first marine propane export terminal on Ridley Island in 2019. BASF President of Global Procurement Matthias Dome said partnering with AltaGas secures, quote, reliable and competitive access to butane from Western Canada. Reliable and competitive access. Reliable, I'm guessing, ladies and gentlemen, means that when it's really cold out and windy and dark, such as we have times in February when it's cold and windy and dark, that our reliable resources, meaning petroleum resources, will be there when we hit the thermostat to turn up the heat if we so choose. Now, I know this stuff is being exported, but with respect to the U.S. markets, I'm I hope you are too. I'm just hoping that it's only a matter of time before we see more of our petroleum products not only available in a less expensive rate, but more available all over the world too. While details on the scope of the agreement were not released, King said AltaGas is already talking about expanding reef capacity by 2030. Quote, I expect that the expansion has a good chance of going ahead given that the demand for LPGs out of Asia has remained very robust, end quote, he said. Canada's success in growing propane exports offers a model for butane's potential. According to the Canadian Energy Regulator, CER, propane exports, most of which come from Alberta, have more than doubled over the past decade as the new BC terminal infrastructure came online. As of June 2025, shipments to non-U.S. locations were nearly even with exports south of the border, CER reports. According to Canadian Propane Association, CPA, the largest customers after the U.S. are Japan, South Korea, and Mexico. Earlier this year, the CPA joined Alberta government officials, industry representatives, Indigenous leaders on a trade mission to Japan aimed at diversifying Canada's energy exports. Quote, Canadian propane, with its lower carbon footprint, is uniquely positioned to support Japan's decarbonization efforts, end quote, said the CPA's president and CEO, Shannon Watt. By collaborating with Japan, we can demonstrate how Canadian propane meets the demand for sustainable energy solutions while enhancing energy security in a complex geopolitical landscape. Now, I brought this article up because with natural gas and its byproducts, we could have, even in the Northeast, and I've brought this up before, but I need to keep hammering the point. We could have been, over the past decade, much cleaner had we been able to access a natural gas pipeline for the Northeast. But that was stopped by the certain environmental groups. So instead of actually having a cleaner Northeast, we don't have a cleaner Northeast because of natural gas, because it was stalled, it was stopped. Now I know the federal EPA is looking at ways to get natural gas pipelines permitted to come to the Northeast, so that's not the case, but there's still going to be some time involved in getting the pipeline permitted and built. But that is on our horizon. So, and a lot of people need to realize petroleum products are their own storage. If you have, say, for instance, a 500-gallon fuel oil tank in your basement, then it's going to be more reliable than any sort of battery that's going to be needed to provide you the energy for your home in the middle of the winter when it's 10 degrees or 10 below in the middle of the night in February. This is the thing that's lost, and it's been lost on the whole green energy debate. The solar power or the wind power that may or may not be generated by some of these so-called green energy options for us, whether it be in the Northeast or anywhere. I mean, look at Texas. When the wind stopped, what happened a few years ago in Texas? With these natural gas and other petroleum-powered plants, power plants, you have just the option to turn turbines on and off with the need, where with wind and solar, you don't have that option. And we don't have the battery backup that we need. And if you look, I was just looking, there was someone who posted on X, the difference in the size of the number of square kilometers that would be needed for a nuclear reactor to provide electricity versus solar panels and solar farms to provide electricity versus wind farms to provide electricity. And there is a massive increase, a massive difference. So that's something that's lost on the whole debate, that's not discussed, because it's one of those in the con column that people do not want most of the average citizens to understand. The Shaftesbury Solar, for instance, that will not provide much electricity compared to the size of the acreage that's involved, compared to a nuclear, even a modular nuclear plant, which I believe a modular nuclear plant only needs about 6 acres. 6 acres. So your typical Shaftesbury Solar, which I think is 100, was it 104 or 140? I can't remember. But couldn't compare. Couldn't compare. So in closing, ladies and gentlemen, we're already coming to the end of a show. There are mistakes that have been made. They were mistakes that were made by flesh and blood humans. Maybe they were made with the best of intentions, but they were still mistakes that were made. And the best thing we can do is admit that we made mistakes, that they were costly mistakes, and take the measures to reverse course and go with something that has been proven or shows more promise, so that we can jumpstart our economy, get our housing market going, and then we can, and we didn't even get to the other issue, public safety, which is also hot on people's minds. So anyway, mistakes to think about, reversing course. We've come to the end of a show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, stay informed, stay safe, listen to Right Side Up.